What are you saying, guys? Welcome to my first ever video. My name's Isa and I'm a medical student with a passion for fitness. So with lockdown being lifted in many countries, the gyms are starting to reopen as well. I know that here in the UK, the gyms are opening on the 25th of July, so that's like in around 2 weeks or so. And I'm sure many of us, including myself, will be wanting to just rush back to the gym, start lifting all those heavy weights and, get those gains back, right? But I just wanted to imagine this, right? So you've been resting for quite a few months, maybe been doing some light workouts, but for the most part not been lifting as heavy as you did when you went to the gym. So when you go back, the last thing that you'd want is to get injured again and then having to rest for a few more months. So to try and avoid that kind of frustration, today's video is going to focus on how to prevent those injuries, and more specifically tendon injuries. And what we're going to learn from this video isn't just about lockdown, but to be honest, it can be applied to any situation where you've taken a break for a few months from lifting or going to the gym. So first we're going to go through exactly what tendons are and how they work, then also about why they may be more prone to injury at the moment after taking a break from the gym, and why it's important to train your tendons, because a lot of people do neglect training their tendons and that can lead to injury. We're also going to go through how you can actually strengthen your tendons to minimize this injury, both in the phase leading up to starting the gym again, and also once you have started going to the gym again, what you can do then to strengthen your tendons and reduce the risk of injury. So what I'm going to try to do with these videos is actually leave a link to the sources in the description below, and put down here on screen the source that I'm actually mentioning, so that you know I'm not just waffling and making it up. So it's all backed by science on this channel. So what exactly are tendons? Well, they're the bits of fibrous tissue connected to either end of your muscle, and they're what connects the muscle to the bone. So you can imagine all the stress, all the force that the muscles generate. In order for it to actually move our skeleton, it has to go through that piece of tendon. And this is why having strong tendons and healthy tendons is such an important thing. Without it, essentially, the muscle was useless. We can't generate movement with it. And I'm sure you've heard of the saying that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Well, that is especially true in this situation, because as you can imagine, if the tendon is weak and it starts to get a tear, the whole system is, well, it has no function. It's kind of useless because it doesn't work anymore. So that's why it's important that we actually take care of our tendons and strengthen them to avoid injury. And we can actually see tendons working if we just look at our own muscles. So for example, if you just tense your bicep, put your fingers over the elbow area, and you should feel something starts to become hard. That's not muscle, because it's not as hard as muscle. You can feel the difference, right? That's actually your tendons working. So when you forcefully contract, those are the tendons that stiffen up and transmit all that energy to move the bones. And you can also see it if you look at your wrist, for example. So if you can see here, these are your tendons. Another place you can see this is actually behind the knee. When you tense the hamstring muscles, you should feel something stiffen up behind the knee on either side, and those are the tendons as well. So now we know a bit about what tendons are, but why is it especially to train them now before going back to the gym? Well, to explain this, there's a 2010 study led by Kitara Kubo, who's actually a very prominent figure when it comes to studies on tendon adaptations. And what this study did was it took a group of individuals and it had them train for 3 months. So specifically they were training their knees, so knee training for 3 months, and then what they had them do is take a break from training for another 3 months, similar to what's going on in lockdown here. And what they found is that after only 2 months, the tendons lost all the stiffness that they had gained from that original weight training stimulus. And this is also replicated in another study where it was actually found that after only 1 month, all the tendon stiffness had reduced and had become much looser. And loose tendons isn't what we really want when we're training, because that can make you more prone to injury. And I'm going to put a few studies down here where it's actually been associated with what we call tendinopathy. Tendinopathy just means damaged or injured tendons. And if you want to read a bit more about why tendon stiffness is actually a good thing and why we want to develop that, I'll leave a link again in the description to an article which actually explains it quite well. In addition, there was also a 2011 study by Fritziero et al. Which concluded that after a period of detraining, it is important that you go through a transition phase of rehabilitation in order to prevent injury when you do get back to it. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? These tendons have been resting, they haven't been exposed to as much force as they had before, and so they've kind of got used to this detrained state. And so you can imagine how loading it too quickly and too heavily can result in damage and inflammation in the actual tendons. So how do you actually strengthen these tendons? Well, if you look online, you'll probably see a few different ways, such as high volume training, weighted stretch training, etc. But there isn't a lot of literature backing these kind of methods. So what we're going to do in this video is focus on what the literature does actually prove works. And that narrows it down to 4 different ways. So there's eccentric training, isometrics, plyometrics, and heavy slow resistance training. So plyometrics involves a lot of jumping and explosive movements, so this might actually be better once you've built up a bit of strength in your tendons and ligaments. Similarly with heavy slow resistance training, we kind of want to work up to that point and not go all in from the very start. So for that reason, in this video we're going to focus on eccentric training and isometric training. So we'll start with eccentric training. So a lot of muscle exercises consist of 2 phases. The first is the concentric, when the muscle shortens and contracts, and the second phase is the eccentric, when the muscle is lengthened under that stress. With eccentric training, what we want to do is focus on that second phase and make it last a bit longer, so I'd say 3 to 4 seconds. And this can be done with any muscle group. So for example, the biceps with the bicep curl. You can also do this with calf raises. Also you can do it with press-ups, and even chin-ups as well, and pull-ups. And the other method is isometric training. So this is a static exercise which involves contracting the muscle in a fixed position so that the joint doesn't really move, the angle kind of stays the same. So once again, this can be used with any muscle group really. So you can do this holding a press-up, you can do it holding a squat, or if you're doing a bicep curl, if you just hold it halfway at 90 degrees. Even things like chin-ups and calf raises you can also do static isometric exercises. And these 2 methods can be incorporated right now into your daily workouts before you actually get to the gym in order to build that strength up. So for example, if you're doing normally a set of bicep curls, what you could do just to finish off is maybe 5 reps of slow eccentric curls, focusing on that eccentric for 4 seconds. And then you can also, or you could also finish off another set by holding it at 90 degrees for as long as you can. And these are 2 proven ways to strengthen the tendons to reduce your chances of injury. Okay, so you've started doing these exercises and you're looking forward to strengthening your tendons, but we also must remember that recovery is very important. Just like your muscles need protein, carbohydrates and other micronutrients, your tendons also need the same. So for example, things in your diet that can aid tendon recovery involve things like vitamin C, which you can find in oranges and peppers, and also vitamin D and zinc, which are both found in various meats and dairies. Adequate protein has also been linked with tendon recovery. So optimizing your diet and also getting enough sleep every night should maximize the benefit you get from training your tendons. Okay, so you've done your transition phase training, you've maximized your recovery, and you're ready to get back to the gym. So here are a few things you can do when you're actually at the gym to minimize your risk of injury, and it's also good practice for preventing injury as a whole in the future. Okay, so when you're in the gym, before you do your weight training, it's a good idea to just do 5 minutes warm up before you start. And this can be as simple as running on the treadmill until you have a light sweat, or you can do the same thing on the rowing machine. But this is just really to get the joints a bit loosened up and lubricated. Okay, so when you start to actually get into the exercises, it's also important that you use correct form. And afterwards, when you're done, stretching the muscle. A lot of people tend to stretch the muscle before, but this isn't as effective because the muscle isn't as warm. So to maximize the benefits, you want to actually stretch the muscle afterwards. This helps with to prevent tendon injury, but it also helps with muscle recovery as well. And the advice I've just given is also the exact advice given by Dr. Emily Harold, a sports medicine doctor in the States. And if you really want to minimize the risk during training, then in terms of exercise selection, you can choose to do isolation movements over compound exercises. So for example, using more machines and as opposed to things like bench press and squats. But I do understand that a lot of us do want to go back to those exercises straight away, and so it should be fine as long as you start with a light weight, of course, and use the correct form and all the other tips that we've just spoken about. And once you've built up a bit more strength in your tendons and ligaments, and you really want to get those bulletproof tendons for the future, then you can start implementing these other methods such as plyometrics and also heavy resistance training. So guys, the takeaway of this video is don't rush things. Use the eccentric and isometric training and exercises we were talking about. Try and build up before using heavy weight, and incorporate all the things that we've spoken about in this video, and you should be on your way to making those injury-free gains. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. This has actually been my first video, so I do appreciate any feedback. If you could leave in the comments below things that went well, things that could have gone better, and leave a like if you found it helpful or interesting. Make sure you subscribe for more fitness videos backed by science. This, guys, is only the beginning. Work hard but work smart, and I'll see you in the next video.